60 people here waiting to talk or waiting to listen to my interview with the DA. Before we bring him on, a little bit about him. He was elected as the DA here in Los Angeles for the county in 2020. Before that, San Francisco. Before that, he was chief of police, I believe, in Mesa, Arizona. Shout out South Phoenix. That's where my family's from. And before that, assistant chief of police, I believe, for the LAPD. He was with the LAPD since the 70s, which I have a question about that alone, which is wild. His family immigrated from Cuba, I believe, let me get the dates right, late 60s, and they resided in Bell. And along with all his other educational achievements, which is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And I want to give one more shout out to our lawyer, Jaime Gutierrez, for bringing this all together. And we have his links in the chat description as well. But let's bring him on. This guy is doing international, national, and regional press, and we're just so happy to have George Gascon. Senor, how are you?
I'm doing well, Paulie. How you doing?
Hey, you got in the right place.
Well, brother Jamie Gutierrez says that you're the man, so we're here.
Man, Jaime, me and Jaime go way back. So again, thank you for coming on and thank you for your time, sir.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for hosting.
Let me just ask this. It's 24 hours since you gave your press conference, about give or take a few minutes.
Right.
I bet it's been a whirlwind the last 24 hours for you. Have you heard from the Menendez brothers? Have you heard anything else from the family during these last 24 hours?
No, I haven't. And, I purposely, other than meeting the family for the first time yesterday, those that came, I've left the trial team and the legal team, do the interface with them because I wanted to really kind of keep myself, to be able to think about this very neutrally. So I did not talk to them till yesterday and of course they came to the press conference not knowing what my decision was going to be, and then I haven't talked to them since. They may be contact in the future, but I have not in the last 24 hours.
How has it been for you? I mean, you're just doing press, you're doing this, you're doing, like La Opinion and stuff like that. Obviously, you've worked in San Francisco, you've worked here, you're kind of used to dealing with cameras and all that stuff, but this is a little different. Different.
Yeah, and it's really kind of sad in a way, right? Because while this case has a lot of attention, and I understand why, but I've resentenced over 300 people since I've been in office. We have exonerated now 14, hopefully 16. Most of them are poor Black and brown kids, right? And nobody pays attention to their plight. Many have been in prison for decades. Some of them wrongfully convicted on the exoneration side. And it's like, all of a sudden this, because it has so much media attention, is being brought to a whole new level. And the only thing that I would say, number one, is, I'm glad that we can do this for the Menendez brothers. We still have probably hundreds of other people that we should be considering. They came according to our queue. But I guess the one thing that it is positive, I think, and it's happened in the last 24 hours, all certain people are paying attention to the people that are in prison that shouldn't be there anymore, that have paid their debt to society, that are poor, that are Black and brown, that could come back and reintegrate with their families in our community and actually be productive members of our society, that are often ignored. So to that extent, I thank the Menendez brothers for giving us a platform to raise this very important issue.
Let's get to some of these questions that I have, sir, and fellow, YouTubers, and that we're all into, legal cases and stuff. Help me with these questions.
Sure.
What convinced you that the brothers' claims of abuse were legitimate, more than what you saw, what we all saw on Netflix with the Ryan Murphy production and with the documentary?
Yeah. So let me first of all tell you, I have not seen either documentary, and I said that I wouldn't until I made my decision, and it's only 24 hours, so I haven't had a chance to see them. So let me kind of, for those that sort of have their, they care about the legal stuff. There are two vehicles here, and the defense has tried to seek relief from either one of them. About a year and a half ago, they filed what we call a habeas petition. Basically, what the defense is alleging, hey, there's evidence that should have been presented to the jury, and had the jury seen this evidence, they may have come up to a different conclusion. Now, it's important to know that there were two trials here. The first trial was a hung jury, and in that trial, there was a lot of evidence of sexual molestation that came in, and the jury split. They couldn't make a decision. Part of the jury says, hey, we know that they killed the parents, that was never a doubt, but we think it's a manslaughter, which would have meant that they would have been in prison for a fraction of the time they have been in prison.
Mm.
And the other part of the jury says, no, they should be in prison for life. Also, it's important to note that the prosecution actually was seeking the death penalty, but the jury hung on there too. Second trial, a lot of the evidence that was presented on the first time was not presented. There was still some evidence of molestation, but there was also a lot of attacks to the credibility of that. Again, we tried to get the death penalty, and that failed, but the jury convicted and sent them to prison without the possibility of parole. So what they're saying, hey, because of that evidence that wasn't presented, plus new evidence that came in later as a result of a member of the Menudo band coming forward and indicating that he had been also raped by the father, and a letter that came out to light in 2015 or so.
Mm-hmm.
All this should have come in. It didn't come in, and if it did, the jury would have maybe arrived at a different place. Okay, so park that for a second. Then under California law, there's another vehicle for relief, which the defense team asked for that relief earlier this year, and that's a resentencing. Under the resentencing rules, the prosecutor only looks at really basically two things, primarily. Number one, have they been in prison a long enough time based on the law? And number two, have they rehabilitated, and are they safe to be reintegrated into our community? And then under the law, if they were 26 years of age at the time they committed the crime, or less than 26, I should say, they qualify for what is called youthful parole. So in this case, I decided to go this route. So we're looking at the resentencing, which really doesn't have to touch upon the validity of the evidence in the crime or evidence that should have been presented that was not. We're simply looking, okay, have they been in prison long enough? They've been in prison 35 years. Have they rehabilitated? We have looked at their prison files going back to the very beginning. And I tell you, they're exceptional conduct. There are many prison officials actually that have been advocating for them to be released. Not only have they worked on self-improvement, but they also done a lot of work to help their fellow prisoners. They want to study sign language to be able to help prisoners that didn't have the ability to speak or to hear. They also work on other circles to help people that had disabilities. They work on the beautification of the prison. They become sort of a mediator between the inmates and prison officials for living conditions within the prison. So they've done all this stuff, and they did all of this during a period of time where they thought they would never get out of prison, right? So
their appeals were done.
Their appeals were done, and they were there for the rest of their life.
Right.
And I looked at that and I said, these people have clearly rehabilitated. So then the second question to us is, would they be safe to be integrating our society? Do they have a path? They're both married. One of them has a 15-year-old child. The spouses of both of them, one is a practicing attorney, the other one's a business owner. Most of the family, about 12 family members, are in complete support, and they're begging for them to be released. There is one family member, one of the uncles, that says no. So that was what I looked at in order to reach this final decision. And what we're seeking from the court, by the way, we're not saying that the murder didn't occur. Look, it was a brutal, premeditated murder, okay? So let's put that right up front. Let's assume that they were properly convicted. What we're saying is, yes, we recognize that they committed this brutal murder when they were 19 and 21 years of age. We also believe that they have rehabilitated, that they have now been in prison for 35 years, and that the community and their family and all of us would better serve if they came back and hopefully engage community and help other young people that may be having a troubled youth as they did, and hopefully they become someone that actually not only doesn't get in trouble, but more importantly even that goes out and creates a difference for our community.
So they've done all this during the last 20 years. They've really influenced positive as far as being a positive influence in the prison society that they're in, right? They've helped out and you really take that in, you took that into consideration. Is that what you're saying?
Hugely, it was part of the equation for me to make this final decision.
Wow. Okay. So now now that just because you did doesn't mean the judge will.
Correct.
Right? So explain that to me. Like you're going to present that like you already did today, I assumed, your
Yeah.
people, and now it's up to the judge.
Right. So, we present all this. There were, by the way, there are people in my office that believe that these two brothers should be in prison for the rest of their life.
That's my next question.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, but here's where it becomes important to the answer to your question.
Mhm.
So, a judge will take our petition, they will take the defense's, uh, motions. They will also entertain any opposition from other people, which may very well come from my office or
Mm.
from the uncle that believes that they should not be released.
Mm.
Then the judge will evaluate all that. He will set a hearing. The hearing could probably come up in the next 30 to 45 days, and then the judge will make a final decision.
Mhm.
If he, meaning the judge, agrees with our request, or he could actually go even further down the line. We're saying, hey, keep a murder conviction, just simply uh, they're eligible for parole then because of how long they've been. But we're saying 50 years to life, but because they've been in prison 35, under 26 years of age, they qualify for parole. But the judge may actually say, you know what, I think it's actually a manslaughter case and they could be released immediately. Or the judge could agree with us and say, no, we'll put life with the possibility of parole. And then it goes back to the parole board and the prison system to determine whether they can be released or not. Or the judge could take a third option and say, I disagree with you guys. The conviction stays as it is, in which case, then the only avenue that they would have is, continue with the habeas, which is the earlier path, which is
Mhm.
basically attack the evidence placed in the original trial.
Wow, fascinating. It's fascinating because you're saying within your own office, there's just a disagreement, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think, yeah, people in my chat are just like going, just really just like this is incredible because, what about the intent? What about the premeditation? This was, and I'm sure that's all going to be part of this, as it was before. Um, so how difficult is that? Was that for you to, or was it a spirited discussion, or were you just like, hey man, it,
No, listen, I mean,
yeah,
first of all, we have resentenced over 300 people since I've been in office,
mm-hmm,
right? 28 of them for murder. Less than 1% has reoffended, no violence. We have also exonerated now 14, hopefully 16 people, surely.
mm-hmm,
And again, all these people that we have resentenced in the last 3.5 years, they have been poor brown and black kids,
mm-hmm,
and they're all doing extremely well. Um, this is entertained in the law. The way the law is written today allows for this to occur, and we still have thousands of people in California prisons that are there just simply, vegetating away. That they have been in prison for decades.
mm-hmm,
They have done all they can to make themselves a better person, and if they were to be reintegrated in society with their families, I think that we would all be a better community for. There is no question that there was a brutal premeditated double murder that they caused, but I think it's also important to realize, A, their age, and B, the conditions upon which they were living. And I think that even though that doesn't play a part in the process that we're looking at, because our
Hmm.
process is purely one of have they been in prison long enough, have they rehabilitated under the law, can they be released? But that certainly is a component that I think we as a society need to begin to ask ourselves, because we have literally thousands and thousands of people in prison today. They're in their 70s and 80s, or younger people like this two brothers that have more than paid their debt to society.
Hmm.
You have to ask how much is enough, and why are we spending billions of dollars in a system that doesn't necessarily give us any more safety or security. And frankly, I'll give you another piece. I was talking to a friend of mine
Hmm.
who is a professor at Oxford University, and he was telling me the other day, we were having a conversation. He said, George, the things that you are talking and other people are talking about, like maybe progressive ideas, this is the way that most of the other countries in the world operate outside of the totalitarian, systems. I mean,
Mm.
democracies, industrialized democracies, very seldom have prison sentences over 20 years. They do not have the death penalty. Even half of the states in the US do not have the death penalty anymore. So we still have a lot of area for improvement here. And the savings could go to education, could go to better policing, could go to better medical care. I mean, there's so much that we're in need, housing for the unhoused. So I think that as a society, we need to begin to reevaluate what is the process of ensuring accountability and safety for our community, and when does redemption and rehabilitation become part of the conversation?
I am listen, I'm very happy to hear what they've done for the last 20 years, right? In being a positive influence in their society. I have over 9 years sobriety. All right. My whole mantra is being a positive influence in my community because my sobriety demands it. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm 100% on that. My thing though is that they wouldn't be where they're at if not for their privilege, for their wealth, for all the things that they were afforded that these other, like you said, poor people haven't had. These guys have had some privilege, man. And this is just my opinion, sir.
No, and listen, I mean, let me come back to you, because and I was telling this, there was a national network reporter, and we had this conversation on the air yesterday, because she
Hmm.
asked, quite frankly, the same question you asked. And I said, and I asked her this. I said, look, just 2 days ago, we tried to file a petition to exonerate a young Latino man and a young Latino woman who had been in prison for 17 years that were wrongfully convicted. And I asked her, where were you 2 days ago when we were doing this? Because we made it public. And then I said, we have resentenced over 300 black and brown kids that committed, 28 of them committed murder, just like the
Right.
Menendez did. They're not living a productive life. We released them all. We made it public. Where was the national media when we did this? Because we made it public. Nobody, and I tell you,
Mm.
we're doing this work, right? The problem is, the reason why this had gotten such an attention is because, yeah, they were wealthy kids. It captured the imagination, and there's no question that you have these documentaries, including the most recent one.
Hmm.
But as to our work, the work that I'm doing in the office, we have been doing this for 3.5 years, and most of the people, in fact, I would say not most of them, all but two of the people that we provided relief so far come from extreme uh, vulnerable backgrounds,
Hmm.
poor black and brown kids. So the problem is not necessarily why the attention, what I'm doing, but why is it the attention now and not before? And that's why I said earlier, what I am grateful about the Menendez is actually giving us an opportunity for me to have this conversation with you today, or to have it yesterday with the national network. And it was funny because at the end, after we were off the camera, the reporter apologized to me because she happens to be African American. Says, you're right, we should be paying attention to those things too.
And to kind of further, open that up is what you were talking about in regards to people that were false. Is this the one? I read a little bit about this. Is this are these the two people you were talking about?
Well, so he's one of them. So that's Mr. Palacio, that's his sister.
Hmm.
And then there's a young woman. Mr. Palacio was 15 years of age when he was wrongfully convicted of murder.
Correct. In '07, he was 15.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So we put the video out. By the way, it's public, so I encourage you to pick it up since you have a YouTube channel. You can see
Sure.
it, share it with. We put segments because it's long. There are about 3 hours of video for him and three for her.
Hmm.
But you can see the interrogation of the police. So these kids land on a photo lined up of a gang file. Quite frankly, only because they happen to be poor and brown. There was
And
no other.
from the same area of White Fence.
It's a white fence area, but
It's a neighborhood. It's a neighborhood.
it's a neighborhood. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so Mr. Palacio has no gang history of crime. He only had one minor misdemeanor arrest, nothing to do with furtherance of the gang, anything like that.
Hmm.
He gets yanked from his home very late night, early morning, taken to a police station. He is placed in an interrogation room for hours.
Hmm.
He has three different detectives, and we know this because we have the video and the audio. He, Mr. Palacio, doesn't know that he's being video. And basically, they're bashing him and saying, "We have video, we have witnesses. In fact, we have your co defendant is next in the room next door saying you did this. We have, we got all this evidence about you. We have, and you should just come clean because if you don't, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison." And for over 2 hours, he continues to say, "You have the wrong guy. I didn't do anything." In fact, there's a 15-minute period where they leave him alone to kind of sort of vegetate in the room. He doesn't know he's being video. And he is literally in half in English and Spanish. He's crying, he's praying, he's asking God for help.
Hmm.
Then they come back again. He even tells the detective, sometimes the wrong people get convicted. And the detective says, "Well, you have any statistics to prove that?" Well, by the way, I do. He didn't. But anyway, he finally breaks down.
Uh-huh.
And he starts to say, "Okay, I'll tell you basically what you want to hear." And he doesn't use his words. He starts to describe the murder scene and what occurred, and it's completely wrong. So let me tell you, the murder happens at nighttime. The victims were inside a car. He starts by saying it was daytime. It might have been daytime. They might have been running. They were not running. It was not daytime. He describes the weapon he has as a revolver. It wasn't a revolver, it was a pistol. The weapon, by the way, was never recovered, but we know it's a pistol because of the casings. Basically, his entire description of the incident
Hmm.
is not what occurred. And you would think, okay, if this guy was the murderer, he would know. And it was only like a few weeks after the murder occurred. Then the detective has to kind of walk him through what occurred step
Mm.
by step. And, and
Old
he's,
school. Yeah. Old
okay,
school.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's terrible.
Playtest, the 20-year-old women who do not know Mr. Palacio, by the way, they don't know each other. Even though the two people that were involved in the killing not only knew each other, they were in the same car. Playtest, not Playtest, the woman that was involved in the killing was the driver of the other car,
Hmm.
and the passenger was one of the person that did the killing, and the other two people were in the car. Playtest says, I must have a double out there because I didn't, and she asked it. And by the way, these kids are kind of insinuating they're wanting an attorney. They don't get one, right? So
Wow.
after all this, we have three witnesses. We don't have video. We don't have any physical evidence. We have nothing. There
Hmm.
are two young women that are in a parking lot a distance away that when they get shown the photos, they say, well, they look like they may be, very, very, they kind of look like them. Okay. In fact, that's what they say in court. And then there is a fiance of the person that was murdered who was in the car, who wears trifocal glasses, and who, when she sees the shooting, basically she dogs, right?
Hmm.
She's also a white person, and this becomes relevant because the science tells us, and by the way, we knew that in 2009, that cross-racial identification is very unreliable, meaning the science tells us that it's very hard for us to accurately describe people of different races,
Hmm.
especially when you're under a lot of stress. So she picks him after, multiple times of showing the photos. This is all they go to trial with. The
Hmm.
lawyer handling the case for our office never makes the video available to the jury or the defense because the video would have been so damning, right? Especially Mr. Palacios' video, because that's the one that allegedly had the admission. So that never enters into evidence. So we go based on three witness ID, two that basically are unsure, and one that probably, for many reasons, didn't identify the right person. And by the way, we now know who committed the crime.
That's
Um,
what people in my chat were asking.
yeah, we do, right? So we're giving that information to the police and they're looking into. But even if we hadn't, by the way, because our standard is not identifying who did the killing, our
Uh-huh.
standard for exoneration is, are we convinced that this person didn't do the killing or the act? All that was there. And yeah, these young people were convicted of murder and sent to prison for decades. He was 15. He was tried as an adult. She
Mm.
was 20. And there was so much evidence that they were not there. In fact, there were alibis. They were not there.
So, I mean, I don't want to say that's an easy one. That's an easy layup, but
No,
not. I can't imagine. So I'm happy for that. I'm happy we can spotlight that. Yesterday, I have two more questions, sir. If
yeah,
that's all
yeah.
right, I have two more.
Sure, of
Two
course,
more.
yeah.
Uh, Yesterday, you had talked about some stats, and I'm a little confused.
Yep.
So help me out here. You had said you guys have resentenced 300,
Over 300.
and how many of them have since reoffended?
Four. Less than 1%.
Less than 1%,
Yep.
which is incredible. That is incredible. Then you said you said the thing that I was confused about. You said that the national reoffend number was up to what, 40 to 50%?
Yeah, in the United States, which we're unique in many ways because not only do we incarcerate more people, but we don't rehabilitate people well either.
Mm,
Um, Nationally, between 40 and 50% of all the people that are arrested and convicted reoffend within a period of time,
mm-hmm.
usually between 1 and 3 years. This group, we got people now been out for more than 3 years. Only 4 out of 300, less than 1%. If that was our recidivism rate, we would be the safest nation in the world.
Now, some people in my chat and some people will say, well, even four is too many.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, we don't work on a perfect world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I tell you, look, I was born in Cuba, right? Cuba's a very safe country. We just incarcerate a lot of people, and there's not a lot of
I don't
not a
know your
lot of,
humor yet, but I think
there's not a lot of due process.
there's a lot of blackouts right now in Cuba happening.
Well, yeah, that's another problem, right? But
Yeah.
the
Anyway,
point
but
is,
go on, sir. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yes, we could lock half of our population off, and we
Hmm.
will likely have less crime. But all that is fine and well until the shoe drops on your front step, and it happens to be your brother, your neighbor, your cousin.
Hmm.
I've had
Hmm.
people that were very pro death penalty until all of a sudden they have a family member that may be facing the potential of death, even if they committed some horrible crime, and all of a sudden they begin to think, well, maybe that's not the right thing to do. So,
Hmm.
look, every crime is one too many, right? Every
Sure.
murder is one too many. But the reality is that sometimes people are going to harm others and they need to be held accountable. The question is, what does accountability looks like?
Last question. And this is more of like me and my thinking.
Yeah.
As an Angelino kid, you, for the most part, you are as well. You've been in
Yeah.
LA for
60 years.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. You were working. I don't know what your position was at the time that these murders happened. Can
Yeah.
you let the audience know, like, you were in the LAPD in 88, 89?
Yeah. I was a sergeant working South LA. Uh,
Okay.
this crimes occur in Beverly Hills, a different police department. But
Sure.
yeah, I spent 27 years in the LAPD, starting from the ground up. Left as an assistant chief, and then I was the chief of police, as you indicated, in Mesa, Arizona,
Hmm.
and in San Francisco before I became the district attorney. I was in the Army for 3 years before that, left the Army as a sergeant.
So my question is, right? Because you know the makeup of the town. We're mainly Mexican as far as the Latinos
Yeah.
in LA.
Mhm.
You being a Cuban man, younger man at that time, still looking good, sir. But you're like, Menendez, what? The Cuban, what? Ah, what were your thoughts when that happened back then? Because back then it was a different time.
To be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
because it happened in another jurisdiction. I was a cop in South LA,
Mm-hmm.
and I was not one of those that got just sucked into the TV thing. Didn't have the time. Um, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was fascinated by the fact that they murdered their parents. Not because I thought that, obviously a horrible thing, but I was thinking to myself, how can somebody murder your parents, right? That to me
Sure.
is and I think for most of us, right? You think about it, say, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
there's something horrible there, right? But then again, I've been a cop already long enough to know that people do horrible things to each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just never really registered for me in a way that I think many others are fascinated by court TV and all those things. I've never been one of those. So really, this case really became front and center for me in the last year or so as we started to deal with the defense petitions and started reviewing material and thinking about the case.
Well, I thank you for your time, and obviously it's captured the attention internationally, for Spanish and in English, and I really I could keep on going, but I promised that I wouldn't take up any more of your time.
Appreciate you.
This is absolutely fascinating, and I do have one message from one of the members of the channel, and they appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity, and look forward to doing it in the future.
Yeah, we'll be here, man. We'll be
All
here.
right.
I mean, I know you got we're not gonna talk politics, but I do know you have an election coming up. So, yeah.
I look forward to being here again.
There you go. Oh, I like that. I like that confidence. All right,
All right.
Senor, Mr. Gascon, we'll see you soon. You take care of yourself.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias a usted.
Bye.